So we're talking about mascots and handlers, spotters, wranglers, samurai, protectors. We're talking about protecting our mascot, aren't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, with me is Jennifer Smith. She is the president of the National Mascot Association. This was her brainchild to think of a way of keeping mascot performers safer together, some best practices. This is all from her uniquely creative brain. And I'm Nick Carpenter. I'm the outreach director at the National Mascot Association. And we just wanted to have this video, like Jennifer said, just to talk about some of the things we want to keep in mind about having a mascot handler, a spotter. These are things that sometimes can get overlooked, and it's vital that you have a handler or a spotter with you. Isn't that right, Jennifer?
I think it is the most important rule in mascotdom. Mascots have limited vision and they walk out and they're rock stars. They get surrounded. So without a spotter, a handler, someone who has their back and can also has more than just straight ahead vision, peripheral vision is hugely important, the most important.
Yeah, and I think it's also that we kind of differentiate what we're talking about when we say a handler or a spotter. We're actually talking about two different things.
Yes.
But I think it's really important that people understand the difference. So for us at the NMA, we kind of thought about how do we break that apart. And what we've got here is just from our own guidelines that are available to our members. Is we talked about, a spotter isn't somebody who's right there beside the mascot. That's a handler. And the handler that's what you really want in the best situation, somebody who's right there. But a spotter is somebody who's not within 10 feet, but is keeping an eye on things. So, for example, when your mascot is in your venue, at your sports arena or at your company walking around, they're keeping an eye out for the mascot, kind of seeing if the mascot might need help, and they can direct any resources that the mascot might need at that time. And it could be different people, as you're making your way around the arena or around the ballpark. It could just be, everybody knows that, like, when I see the mascot come into my area, I need to help keep an eye out for that person and kind of help. So that's sort of like, I don't know, what would you say, sort of the bare minimum, kind of what we're looking for?
Yeah, I would say it's the bare minimum. The more people around the mascot that has the mascot's interest at heart, the better. The mascot can do a lot for themselves, and they can do a lot to maintain joviality and peace within the venue.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't know what's coming from behind them, or like a 4-year-old, a toddler just learning to walk, stumbling to the mascot. Well, the mascot doesn't know that. So
right.
The handler really has a very important position.
Right, and that's the difference, I think, between the spotter and the handlers. The handler, what we define as a handler, is somebody who's right there, right? Somebody who is close to the mascot, who can immediately either call out to the character, like, hey, Fuzzy Fabulous, you've got a friend, right in front of your feet. And
yes,
so,
yes.
That performer knows, stop moving. I'm
Right.
going to end up kicking this child or whatever. And a spotter can't really do that as easily. So that's why we always talk about having a handler, somebody who's right there. And one thing that I kind of did just right there as well is the handler can be the voice of your mascot.
Yes, because mascots generally don't talk. Some do, but generally they don't. They don't talk, and there are many reasons for that. Yes, handlers.
Yeah. And I when I've been in suit, I've had people come up and ask me lots of questions, and if they're not a yes or a no, it's really hard for the character to answer you. We end up playing charades for I don't know how long, trying to communicate to somebody, and if I've got a handler beside me, suddenly I have that voice to just speak for me.
Yes, and another thing that I've just thought of, one of the big rules in my world is don't hold babies. Mascot. And many people want to have a selfie, a family picture taken with the mascot holding the baby. It's a lovely sentiment, but the mascot can have a big belly with hoops, big muscled arms with foam, big padded hands, and a baby is squirmy. So the handler can really play a significant role there.
Yeah. Stepping in. And I think that leads to one of the things we wanted to talk about with having a handler or a spotter is the liability that can kind of come into play. It's not unheard of for the mascot character to be part of a lawsuit.
No.
I can certainly point you in directions of very famous mascot characters that have been sued. Oftentimes, these lawsuits can often seem litigious, but sometimes there's legitimate reasons, that somebody's been hurt. And if the organization had just planned a little bit ahead of time about safety, around thinking around having that handler there can really help. One of the things that I think about, and I don't mean to get dark, is if you're one-on-one with somebody and there's nobody around, that character can get accused, innocent or they can be accused of doing something. And if you have a handler or a spotter there, you have a witness.
Yeah.
Somebody that says, what are you talking about?
Yes.
That never happened.
Yes.
Personally, I was at a public appearance and a fan stepped up beside me. I was on the sidewalk. They were down. It was, it was a really high rise sidewalk. They stepped up to take a picture with me, a selfie. And then when they were done, they turned to walk away. I never moved. They slipped and fell off the sidewalk. Now, I had never moved. I stayed in my feet planted the whole time for the picture. Mm-hmm. But they tried to take an action against the organization.
Oh dear. Saying that I caused this fall.
Mm-hmm. Luckily, I had spotters.
Yeah.
I had people that were watching and could instantly refute and say, that character never moved. You walked away and fell off the sidewalk because you weren't paying attention. So, and it was dismissed. And so it went away. Yes. So that's the ugly side of why we recommend it.
That is the ugly side. And one of the people, when they're planning their very first mascot program, and it's a complex plan, don't necessarily include in the budget that cost for a handler. You understand the cost for the mascot and the cost for getting the mascot made and designed and where the mascot's going to go and what they're going to do, but you have to also plan the program with the safety of the performer in mind.
Right.
And really way up there towards the top.
One of the things also that having a handler or a spotter can help is damage to the costume. We talked about littles, what they can do. Jennifer, you're also a fabricator of mascot suits. So talk a little bit about kind of those external pieces and kind of how they're held together.
Well, actually, it's hard to damage a mascot, actually, but it can be done because I think all of us there's a secretive inner working to all the mascots. There are hockey helmets and chin cups and quick release buckles and webbing and hoops and foam, but the thing is still made out of fabric and out of foam. And as you know from, wearing a pair of jeans for a year, they don't last that long if you wear them hard, and mascots are worn hard day after day after day. Plus there's a bunch of sweat thrown in. Oops, I know. But so the damage can happen organically. And then if there are things on the outside of the mascot, like, tails, poor mascot, the tail is just there wagging in back of the mascot, begging for some child to grab it and play tug of war. So there's damage to a mask to the costume. There's definitely stress to the costume there.
So for me, one of the things that I'm on high alert the second I see middle school boys.
Oh, oh,
Uh,
oh, yes.
Little kids, of course, they're going to want to grab the tail, but a
Mhm.
little kid is probably not going to do a lot of damage to the costume. But man, when I see middle school boys coming at me, it's just where they're at that age developmentally. They
Yeah.
have no impulse control.
Yes.
They know in their mind that there's a person in this costume, right? But they just have no impulse control. So, the urge strikes them to pull on the face, pull on the tail, and they're bigger and stronger than a little kid.
They are. Well, indeed, the thing about mascots is you take a leap of imagination when seeing a mascot, because you see a mascot and suddenly you're in for children and adults, I think.
Yeah.
You're in cartoon world. You're in the Disney cartoon. You are it's a wonderful altered reality. So, and sometimes you kind of lose yourself, and logically there's a person in there, but really it's a cartoon image. And you've seen those cartoon guys fall off cliffs and they just bounce and they're fine. Well, no.
Not so much in real life.
Not,
Yeah.
yeah, the line between reality and fantasy is very blurred around that.
I like that. I like that the whimsy of that, and sometimes it can get lost on people. That's a great way to put it, Jennifer. So this is another reason just to have that handler. The handler can just help the little child understand, hey, we don't pull on the tail, and also to get a more stern voice with those middle school boys or older people or drunk adults.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't going to talk about that because, most adults are so adult-like, and they're rational and
sure, but
responsible, and they don't teeter when they walk like toddlers, but sometimes they do. And, you have to accept that as it's part of the human condition.
Yeah, and so you have that handler, again, can be that voice, can be that physical barrier, can physically get between the performer and that person and stop that, right?
Yes, indeed. Well, this is where I want to talk a little bit about handler training as well. It's not like it's not really good to give a poor intern who's just started working at the organization 3 days ago the responsibility for the safety of this mascot. That intern, although interested and concerned, doesn't necessarily have the power or the commitment to the mascot and doesn't really understand it. So I would say
training, right?
Training. Have a trained handler with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a complicated world, mascot.
It is. And also, if you're at your own venue, let's say something does get damaged to the costume, right? If you have a trained handler with you, they know, oh, I know the nearest place that we can duck behind and take care of something. Or something's going wrong inside the mascot suit, and the performer needs that break, right? Performer, this is usually what I use to indicate I need a break, like now. And if I show that to my handler knows I got to get this performer somewhere now to take care of something. And so, they're trained well, and they know where to take you, find somewhere the public can't get to, and, get the head off, whatever you need to do to take care of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one last thing I know that you wanted to talk about in particular, Jennifer, was, getting somewhere, changing at the venues. Yeah.
Yes, it's always a bad look when you change in the bathroom and the mascot makes its appearance coming out of the bathroom. Oh, no. Always. And I would say always change in a secure, fairly nice place. So when you come out of the building, you are entering. Be aware of your entrances. Don't come out of the bathroom.
Yeah. I have a theater background, and one of the most important things for a character is their entrance and their exit, right? You always want to be aware of that. And so, you're at a public venue. Let's say you're, let's say you're doing a store appearance. Your character, has a, with your local grocery store or department store or something. And they see somebody walk into the public bathroom with a big bag and walk out. Well, they know who the performer is now, right?
Well, yes, but just even if they don't see you walking in to see you walking out, it's just not a classy move.
No, no, and also you're changing in a public bathroom.
I
How
know.
how clean,
Yuck.
how yeah, how nice is the floor, where you're setting the costume down as you're putting it on. I mean, without getting into gross detail.
The more you think about it, the worse it becomes.
Yeah. So we
Are we going to
recommend
end on bathrooms?
we don't we don't have to end on
Fine
bathrooms.
dining with the mascot. No, take that out of the clip.
Yeah,
No.
so we can just talk about, that there are just numerous advantages that
Yes.
we've sort of laid out, for children, for emergencies, your liability. There's just all these wonderful things. And so this document I have up is our NMA safety guidelines. So as a member, your organization becomes a member, we send this to you. And it's also, we ask that the organizations abide by these rules. We just have some very basic tenets that we think are just common sense that are really going to make your characters stand out better. Your performers are going to be safer. Your fans and your spectators are going to be safer. And that's really what we're about here at the NMA.
Well, have you given them our tagline? Fuzzier together, safer together.
We are fuzzier together, safer together. And I think that is probably the best way to go out today. So
I think it's pretty good.
Thank you all so much for watching this video. Again, go to our website, nationalmascotassociation.com, to learn how to become a member. You can also check out our Facebook page. We're always posting fun things that are happening in the mascot world. Thank you, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you, Nick.